learn and explore your price walls. Instead of avoiding them, work with them, use them, and create higher demand for your products and services.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
I mean, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Jennings Executive Search. I had a great conversation with John Jennings about the skills needed in different pricing roles. He and I think a lot alike. If you're looking for a new pricing role, or if you're trying to hire just the right pricing person, I strongly suggest you reach out to Jennings Executive Search. They specialize in placing pricing people. Say that 3 times fast. Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the quantifiable relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving. Today our guest is Robert Tinterov, and here are 3 things you want to know about Robert before we start. He is the CEO and co-founder of Atenga, a software consultancy. He's actually co-founded several companies, and another one was Updatem AB, a news and media monitoring service. I can't wait to hear how he got from one into pricing. And he's an avid powerboat guy living in Sweden. He's got tons and tons of islands to go to, and he's got salt water in his veins. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Hey, let's do the easy question. How did you get into pricing?
Well, actually, I was always interested in pricing when I was running like businesses in other areas. And my interest became more concrete when I sometimes saw that pricing could have a huge impact, and I didn't really understand why. So that, in combination with new accessible technology, created some opportunities to do something about it. So it's my personal interest in running businesses from other areas, combining, technology and trying to get more business to understand that pricing is fun.
So that's actually really interesting because as a business owner, skip pricing for a second, as a business owner, you saw the power of pricing, which as pricing people, we know is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And then you said, well, this isn't done well enough. I should explore it, understand it. And then as you learned it, you said, how can I help other companies? Is that
correct? That's
okay?
correct.
So what does Atenga do?
Well, we focus on helping, non-pricing specialists getting introduced and to learn about that you can create huge effects by doing small changes to your price setting process. So we've developed a process or a model where we can do very precise measurements on pricing, on tools, products, services. And the idea for companies who engage with us, that they will have a very, a plan so they can launch and immediately engage in the changes in pricing. So they can have effects quickly. It's not very pricing savvy. It's like business oriented. We don't use a lot of all that pricing lingo because we're not pricing experts. Myself, I have, of course, pricing specialists in my team, but I think we need to get more companies to understand, to have another approach to pricing than previously. Because that helped me for sure when I was running other businesses, as you said.
Yeah. So are you typically working with small and medium-sized companies? And I ask that because it feels like really big companies have their own pricing people, their own pricing teams.
Yeah. I mean, initially we targeted, there's like three levels of potential users of our services. So one is, of course, the big companies who normally uses the big four, the consultancies, the multi-million-dollar projects. We don't target those. Then we have, on the bottom line, we have all the guys sitting back at home doing guesswork, working on Excel sheets and trial and error and never get anywhere. So we target all the other companies who understand that they need to improve it, or they want to improve on their price setting procedures. And they don't have a multi-million budget. They don't have pricing team internally, but they understand that they could benefit from doing something about it. And that's where we come to play.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The mid-sized companies who Now, this is always an interesting question. Do they already know they have a pricing problem, or do you have to convince them they have a pricing problem?
Well, I think that's both ends. If we reach out to people, we kind of explain to them that they might have a problem. But normally people come to us and they say that, we don't know if the pricing is the problem or if we are selling it too high or too low, or are we targeting the right market or the right segment of the business. Then we can go in deep, dive into that and see if we can help them. So people rather purchase from us than we're selling to them.
Yes. And so what kinds of tools or what kinds of things do you do for your clients?
Well, we've developed a process where we do predictive demand analysis, that's what we call it. So we do online surveys, we run it through our engine, and we generate pricing graphs, demand curves. And a key point to that are something we call price walls. Price walls are price points where a small change in price will change demand dramatically.
When you talk about price walls, that sounds to me like my dissertation was on 99 cents when I did my dissertation at Berkeley. And it sounds to me a lot like there are these magic price points. And it could be, when you go from 299 to 300, that's a big difference. And is that a price wall?
It could be. It could be a price wall. Every product or feature or target audience has different price points and different price walls, and that's why it makes it so important to go out and do surveys on that. So you will have different price walls on different target audiences, and you need to know where they're at and how you handle them today. So the first thing we do for a client is we look at the current pricing. And we do these surveys, and then we identify the price walls, and then we can map the current prices towards the price walls. Sometimes it's at 349, sometimes 369 or 79, or maybe even 429. You need to identify where they're sitting, and then you can do that based on segmentation. So if you want to target a specific market or specific feature, we can, from our surveys and our studies, we can tell how that would impact demand or revenue or profitability even.
Nice. And do you have an explanation on why price walls exist, or do you just know that they exist and you help companies find them?
I think that comes back to psychology of our behavior. There are price points, like you said, the 99 cent versus a dollar, like those types of reasons. But then there is also value to it. To me, it's like a low engagement or high engagement investment or spending. So you need to know that for some people, a price could be high and another audience could be lower. So that's why these price points are different for different targets, audiences.
Do you think a price wall always ends in 9? As in, even if it's going to be 349 or 279 or 429, does it ever end in another digit?
It does. Sometimes when, depending on the price, if you're going like more expensive prices, when we do projects for like motorcycles or more expensive features or functions, then the last digit might not really be as important as maybe, so it could be 4,750 instead of 799. But if you go down lower, down to 999, 995, it depends a little bit on the market audience and also the premiums of the product. So it's not always the same.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Okay, I don't know if you're going to share your secret sauce with me, but what's the question you ask about willingness to pay? How do you know how much somebody's willing to pay for something?
So what we do, we've been looking at different, old, well-established procedures like methodologies, and we kind of using the best parts of a combination of everything. So we're enhancing like old Van Westendorp price sensitivity meters or conjoint analysis or max diff. And we translated this into something that business people can understand. So our secret sauce is like enhancing, well-known processes, and then combining that with accessible first-hand survey data instead of looking at transactional data, which we call old data. So we go out in the field and collect new data, and we don't ask, as in conjoint, like either or trade-offs. It's more like, how much do you want to pay? But in a much more intelligent way, of course.
Right. So Van Westendorp has that series of questions that essentially ask how much are you willing to pay without asking that question. So that's
and then being doing this not as a, if I'm doing sporting goods for a big brand, we do this on like an industry level rather than on like representing the company to trying to prevent bias, as could be a problem in these situations. So, and our engine and our intelligence is like kind of mitigating all of those things, which is part of our secret sauce, of course.
Yeah. Pretty fascinating. How do you get to the 9? So if I'm going to ask, let's pretend that I'm asking the question, how much are you willing to pay?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know that's not the right question. That's not the right question, but let's pretend like we asked that question. Mm-hmm. And people are going to give us an honest response. Mm-hmm. Would people ever respond 329, or do they respond 350, 330, 325, right? Round numbers instead of odd numbers.
I would say that it's exactly like you said, it's the way we think about pricing. So I would rather say 350 than 349 if someone asks me, but I might, and our intelligence in our tools or an engine will interpret previous questions and previous patterns in that response.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so then, do you have a tool to get to the 3? Let's pretend like it's 350, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have a tool to get to the 349 part? Because I'm fascinated about 349 versus 350.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we can tell the difference in demand on 350 versus 349.
Okay, so you're asking a different question than how much you're willing to pay on that one. You're really asking how likely are you to purchase at this price point?
Yeah, or actually at which price points are you likely to purchase?
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty fascinating. Fascinating. How do you find your customers?
Well, happy, positive, open-minded.
No, that wasn't what I meant, but thank you. How do you get new business? How's that?
Yeah. Sorry. We do everything everybody does. We're doing outreach. We're doing like this podcast, online calls, demos, training. I'm working a lot with startups because I tend to feel that you're much more accessible to these types of questions when you're in a startup phase, because you don't have your price setting team, or you don't have anything to protect or prevent from risking to lose. So we do as everybody does, but my biggest concern is to get pricing into the boardrooms. I think that pricing question as such is not being treated as it should in a lot of businesses, and hence why people don't really take care of this. That's why people are leaving money on the table. They're developing features and functions that people don't want to buy, and that won't create sustainable companies. So if you could get, so when I see that the companies are looking for, pricing, chief price officers and so forth, then I'm happy, because then they bring it into the senior executive suite or into the boardroom even. But we tend to see that it's treated by the marketing department or sales department or someone else. I don't know who, but someone else. That is a big problem, and it's a big concern to me. So I would like to make efforts to get the pricing possibilities on the agenda in the boardrooms. That's really important to us. I think there's a lot of things we can improve on that.
Yeah, and I always wonder, why is pricing not in the boardroom already. Because when I think about pricing, it is one of the most powerful things a company, one of the most powerful levers a company has to pull.
Hmm.
If you mess it up, you really hurt your company.
Hmm.
And yet I can guarantee you that no company is doing it perfectly, right? There's
Right.
always room for improvement. And so
Yeah.
why doesn't the boardroom care? And I struggle with that. Do you have a guess?
Uh, I think it comes back to that originally you did pricing analysis or price settings in the budget processes like once a year or once each quarter, and you had a streamlined process for that, and you looked at transactional data, and it was hard to get real data which is adequate and active. Today that's not the same thing. Everything is accessible out there. There's a lot of data you can gather. And the other thing which I think is a problem is that it's a very strategic decision to change the price. So if it doesn't come from the boardroom, no one else in the company would touch it. And this is something that I think the pricing industry needs to work on as a whole, to get that out of the pricing forums into the like I said, boardrooms, and show examples, educate them, create possibilities for people to test, and not always do a 6-month, $2 million pricing study project. That's the antithesis of our business idea, because that's been going on for ages. I did myself in my other businesses as well. Like I spent like $4 million to Boston Consulting Group and got like a pile of documents like this, which were useless. I couldn't use it. It was too strategic and too deep, and a lot of data I didn't really know what to do with. So it ended up in the bin. And it's a lot of investment, but it was sanctioned by the board, and it was completely according to the books. This was like 10 or 15 years ago. Today, I would never touch that type of study. I would go out and do a lot more things myself. I would use the tools that are available, and I will try to get it more operational, more precise for my current needs. So I always say, you can't do everything, but you need to do something. Just start doing more about your pricing in your business, and you will see effects and results quicker than you can expect.
I think it is such a powerful topic, powerful lever, that people are scared to use it because they don't know it. They don't understand it well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then you go hire Boston Consulting Group or some big company, and you end up with this huge transformational report, and you say, well, I can't transform my whole company. I got to do a bite at a time. How do we do small pieces?
And that's exactly my take on this. I think start small, do something about it, get it onto the agenda, learn the processes, do different tests, but you will see that the ROI would be quick. It would be probably more profitable than you expect initially. And on the other side, it could be a risk as well. I think there's differences between the US market and the European market here, with like the mitigation of risk. If you feel that if I don't do anything, might keep my job, or but if I do something and I fail, I get fired. On the other hand, if I do something and it's a success, I will be promoted. So I think this is something that is it's still a secret in business operations that can be developed a lot, and taking into account all these new intelligent software applications and accessibility and transparency, and the buyers are smarter than ever before because they are well educated. They know everything they need to ask about, and we as suppliers, we need to understand that.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't link it when you first said it, but I think your story on how you got into pricing is almost identical to how everybody else gets into pricing. And that is, they did a pricing project and they said, wow, that was really, really powerful. I should go do that again in some other places. And it is pretty fascinating, because that's what you're really describing to companies is go do something
Yeah.
And when you do something, you're going to learn how powerful it really is.
Correct. Agree.
Yeah. This has been a fascinating conversation.
Mhm.
Robert, let me wrap with the last question, if you don't mind. What's
Mhm.
one piece of pricing advice you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
Like I said, learn and explore your price walls, of course, because instead of avoiding them, and work with them, use them, and create higher demand for your products and services. That is the price wall discussion. But the other question is simple. It's like, do something. Start today. Start small. Get into the business, and you will love it.
Yeah, do something. I often put together a chart, and I'm pulling this out of my head, but I often put together a chart for my customers that I work with, and I say, how much impact do you think this project would have, and how hard do you think it would do? And now you do 10 different projects or 20 different projects. You can pick the ones that have the most impact and are easiest to do. Do those first.
Yeah, sure. And again, we tend to see that people start small sometimes, and they come back over and over again, and they start being, repeat clients to us.
Yeah.
And then it involves, other parts of the business processes linked to pricing, and which is very fascinating to be part of, to see that happening within companies.
Yes, we could talk about that for an hour, I think.
Yeah.
All the different parts inside a company. So, Robert, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Well, either my email is robert@atenga.com, or my LinkedIn is my name, Robert Tinterov. I think I'm the only one on LinkedIn with that name, so they probably find me easiest way.
And I'm sure we'll have a link to your LinkedIn page in the show notes.
Yes, sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
144 is all done. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, would you please leave us a rating and a review? And I wanted to let you know, Josie left me an Amazon review for my new book, Win, Keep, Grow, How to Price and Package to Accelerate Your Subscription Business. And Josie wrote, I have been in the subscription business for more than a decade, and I know a lot about pricing. So I wasn't sure if I'd learned something new reading Mark Stiving's new book. But it wasn't only worth the read. I found insights offered in the book eye-opening in several areas, including connecting the win, new customers, keep, customer retention, and grow, increased revenues from existing customers, to the life cycle of the business. For my company, this made it clear that we need to focus on grow now in order to meet our growth goals. And then specific benchmarks and metrics that can be used to prioritize different growth levers. So thank you, Josie. I appreciate the review. Finally, if you have any questions or comments about the podcast or pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact. Thanks again to Jennings Executive Search for sponsoring our podcast. If you're looking to hire someone in pricing, I suggest you contact someone who knows pricing people. Contact Jennings Executive Search.